Is that a great picture?
And war was brewing. This is the first of two major wars that we fought in this area. 1756, that war that was brewing is going to pop off. That war was called the French and Indian War. So the name kind of suggests that it's the French fighting the Native Americans, but that is not true. It's actually the French versus the British, with both sides having Native American allies fighting alongside them. So late 1740s, those Frenchmen, that handful of Frenchmen that are settled here, kind of see the writing on the wall. The British are closing in, and they decided that it was best to head out north from this area of western New York, north to basically the end of the Niagara River. So if you're looking out the starboard side of the boat, which is the right-hand side of the boat, between the two breakwalls that you can see out the right-hand side of the boat would be the entrance onto the Niagara River. So we're going to be traveling onto the Niagara River, probably hanging starboard turn in about 8 minutes, if my calculations are correct. But it's going to be all the way down the Niagara River that the French had two strongholds, two forts that they had built there, Fort George and Fort Niagara. So those Frenchmen decided it was in their best interest, for sure, to just flee this area, head down the Niagara River to those two French forts. And it was a good thing because the British were closing in on this territory. I'll tell you more about the French and Indian War as we make our way out of the Buffalo River, which we are doing. We're still officially in the river. There is a buoy that we are approaching on our starboard side, right-hand side again. It's like a very neonish orange color with a green stripe going through the middle of it. And you may, if you get close enough, to recognize the letters BR on top of that buoy. And that BR stands for the Buffalo River. That signifies the official end or the mouth of the river. So once we pass by that buoy, we'll officially be out in the waters of the Buffalo River. We will then be in the waters of Lake Erie. Now I'll just point out your view out the port side. It's a barge right there, and they're basically just dredging this. So the roundhouse itself sits in 25 feet of water. All right, so let's keep that in mind. So from the surface of the water to the very top of the facility, we would say it's probably, what, 40, 50 feet? And then 25 feet down to get to the floor of Lake Erie. So all told, the building itself is about anywhere from 65 to 75 feet in height. Now, the roundhouse itself would have been constructed on dry land, of course, brought up by barge to this location, dropped into the water, and once a watertight seal was formed inside of that facility, that's when construction began digging a shaft into the bedrock underneath the floor of the lake, which is limestone in this area. So a 12 by 12 foot shaft was dug 20 feet straight down. Now that is solid rock, so once they got down 20 feet, that's when they began literally blasting a tunnel that would connect to that massive facility with a matching red tiled roof on the shoreline on our starboard side. The distance from the roundhouse to the shoreline where the Colonel Ward pumping station is situated is a mile. And he kept a journal. His journal was discovered by local historians, and there were 4 separate occasions he referred to the Seneca native having this trading post on Buffalo's Creek. So Buffalo with an apostrophe S, basically insinuating the creek that belongs to the Seneca native named Buffalo. So over time, that apostrophe S was dropped. The creek then became known as Buffalo Creek, and then over time, the land next to the creek became known as Buffalo. So, again, local historians do not know the answer here with 100% certainty. That is the version of the story that they give the most credence to. Alright, now we've passed on to the Peace Bridge. From where we entered the river to where we are right now, we've lost about 3 feet of elevation. And you can see that because the water is actually pouring out of the Black Rock Canal, which is the waterway on the other side of the pier. An independent country in 1868, so about 90 years after the United States declares independence from Great Britain, so too does Canada, 90 years into the future, that is. Anybody else sweating? I'm just sweating. It's not. You will not be able to feel the process happening. However, you can see the water lines that are on the walls to the lock. That's as high as the water level will get once the entire process of those 2 million gallons coming into the lock will be finished. At that point, once we're raised up to 6 feet, the back gates that are closed right now will open up, and the water level in the lock will be exactly at the same level as the water inside of the canal, and that will allow us to enter into the Black Rock Canal. So the process is flipped every half hour. So if you are boating in the Black Rock Canal and you want to exit out of the canal and enter into the Niagara River at this point, once those back gates open up to allow us to exit out, then boaters from the canal can come in, they'll tie up, and then the process will be flipped. So the gates will swing shut behind those boaters, and then the valves in the gates that we're approaching right now, which are open, will be closed at that point. Those valves will open up and that will expel 2 million gallons of water from the lock, and that will lower those boaters 6 feet down, and that will allow them to enter into the waters that we're in right now. So hopefully that made sense to you. If not, remember what I said at the beginning, you can always just ask me a question. Alright, so I'm not going to take a break just yet. I'll tell you a little bit about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It's the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that has exclusive building and maintenance rights throughout the entire section of the Black Rock Canal. So they maintain and operate the locks. If there's any damage that occurs inside of the canal, it's the Corps of Engineers that are responsible for righting the ship, basically, fixing whatever damage has been done. So there are hydraulic arms, high-powered hydraulic arms that will allow these gates to swing shut behind us. Now you can see the water line, eventually how high the water will get inside of this lock system that we're traveling into. You can see the insignia of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the buildings, these little concrete buildings right here. Their insignia basically looks like a medieval castle.
What's the purpose of using this as opposed to...
Now, if you are a boater, these locks are completely free. They're a federally funded program, so your hard-earned taxpayer dollars go to help
Because of the current?
Yeah, because of the current.
This Black Rock.
Then was they had a tugboat on station at the foot of Ferry Street to assist anything coming down through the bridge. That was the tug called the International. It was tied up right next to the ferry boat that would go across from the foot of Ferry Street. Yeah, Donnie's was on that side.
The strap around your wrist?
Yeah.
The strap around your wrist?
Yeah, back on that side.
Yeah, around your wrist. Jerks.
Yeah. No, those things are all closed up. Yeah.
There is a member of the Canadian Border Patrol that is situated inside of that little building. They need to be on hand to ensure that any of the trains that are passing over the tracks have the proper credentials to either enter into Canada or exit out. So they're the ones that carries all the power. They get to press the magical red button that allows this bridge to swing open for larger boats like the Miss Buffalo 2 to pass through.
Next day, we're gonna use all these.
So this is another quick process. It's I'd say probably less than 60 seconds once we pass by, that once the magical red button is pressed, that bridge will swing completely shut. So you can see the turrets, basically the gears on the bottom of the bridge that allows it to open and close. It's about 10,000 horsepower engine that will allow that bridge to move. Back in my glory days, my mid-20s, when I was single and living in an apartment in North Buffalo, I'd be traveling down the 190 right in this area, and I would think to myself, what the heck, didn't there used to be a bridge here to fight that war? So DeWitt Clinton goes down to Washington looking for federal funding. He's greeted with a no thank you. Now, we could also consider that Thomas Jefferson dies in 1820, so by the time that DeWitt Clinton travels to Washington, D.C. around 1817 looking for this funding, does Thomas Jefferson still have some influence in Washington, D.C. at that point? Was he able to say, guys, look, trust me, I tried it in the 1770s, didn't work, not going to work, don't even do it, I don't know anything about that, but it certainly makes sense that he could have had some sway still. So DeWitt Clinton heads back north to New York. Low. He's disappointed that the government wouldn't fund the project, so he knows that now the burden is going to fall on New York State to pick up the debt. By 1825, when the project is completed, the construction costs numbered around $9 million. Okay, so important to remember that number as well, because that's going to be coming back. From the eastern seaboard of the United States to the Midwest, using the Erie Canal, or vice versa. You can ship product across New York State to get it to the Atlantic Ocean faster than you ever could before. So business is pouring in. Port cities will always be a destination for immigrants because you can always find jobs in port cities. Well, Buffalo was like a port city on steroids. Tons and tons of job opportunities. So the immigrants flock. The population of Buffalo is going to explode in the coming decades. So once the canal opens up